They called it the Hollow Woods, but no one could ever tell me why. Maybe it was because of the way sound moved there, the strange echoes that didn't quite line up with your voice. Or maybe it was because when you called out for someone, sometimes, something else answered. I wasn't supposed to be there. The forest had been sealed off for decades after a wildfire tore through it in the late 90s. But that didn't stop me. I'm a documentary filmmaker, or at least, I was. After the Forgotten Tape went viral, people wanted more stories about cursed places and lost recordings. I thought the Hollow Woods would be perfect for my next film. Turns out, it was. Just not the way I expected. It started with a file someone emailed me, no subject line, no message, just an attachment called hollow_record_01.mov. The video was short. Barely 30 seconds long. It showed a stretch of forest, burned trees, fog drifting between them. The camera panned slowly, shakily. Then, a voice, faint, almost a whisper. He's still filming. The same phrase from the Forgotten Tape. I paused it right there. My hands went cold. It couldn't be real. Couldn't be connected. But then, near the end of the clip, the camera turned, and for half a second, I saw something move between the trees. Tall. Thin. Human-shaped. But wrong. And then the screen cut to black. I traced the metadata on the video. It had been uploaded from a location near Harrow Creek, a ghost town surrounded by forest. Locals said it was abandoned after the fire, but satellite images showed something else, lights. Someone, or something, was still there. So I packed my gear and went. Just me, my camera, and a recorder. When I arrived, the road into the woods was overgrown, the sign half buried in moss. A black warning marker read, "No entry, audio contamination zone." I laughed it off, thinking it was just leftover government jargon from some environmental cleanup. But the deeper I went, the quieter it got. No birds. No wind. Just the crunch of my boots and my own breathing. After about a mile, I started to hear it. A faint echo. At first, I thought it was me, my own footsteps bouncing back. But the rhythm was off. I'd take a step. Then a half second later, another step. Behind me. I turned. Nothing. I kept walking, pretending I didn't notice, but my pulse was hammering in my throat. Then, somewhere in the distance, a voice. Hello. It sounded like a man, far away, but clear. I called back, hello. I'm filming, are you out here? No response. But when I played my audio recorder back a few minutes later, the voice was there again. Only this time, it said something different. You brought the camera. I set up camp near an old ranger outpost that was half collapsed. I filmed everything, the trees, the fog, the silence. It was beautiful in a dead kind of way. That night, I sat by the fire, reviewing my footage. And then, right as I reached the clip of me entering the forest, I froze. In the corner of the frame, behind the trees, was a figure. Just standing there. Watching. I scrubbed back and forth, zoomed in. The figure didn't move. Didn't blink. Just, existed. I checked the next clip, same figure, different angle. Always in the background, just far enough away that I couldn't make out its face. I decided to call it a night. I zipped my tent shut, tried to convince myself it was just paranoia. But around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of someone walking outside my tent. Soft, careful steps. I held my breath, listening. The footsteps circled the tent once, then stopped right behind my head. And then, a whisper. Keep filming. I burst out of the tent, flashlight in hand, spinning in every direction. Nothing but fog and ash. But when I turned back to the tent, my camera was gone. I found it the next morning, sitting upright on a rock a few feet away, pointed directly at me. The battery was dead, but the indicator light blinked faintly, as if it had been recording all night. I checked the footage. At first, it was just static. Then, my tent, shaking slightly in the breeze. And then, something began to crawl into frame. Not walk. Crawl. A figure dragging itself on all fours, bones cracking with each movement, its face hidden behind long, wet hair. It stopped right in front of the camera. And whispered. "He's still here." The video ended. I should have left right then. But I didn't. Because in the very last frame, reflected in the camera lens, I saw me. Standing in the woods. Filming. But I wasn't holding a camera. By dawn, the forest had changed. The fog hadn't lifted, it had thickened, stretching between the trees like gauze. No birds. No wind. Only that hollow quiet, the kind that swallows every sound and leaves you listening to your own heartbeat. I packed what I could and started walking east, following the creek bed. My camera hung from my neck, dead battery or not. Some part of me felt like if I kept filming, I could prove what was happening, make it real enough to control. About an hour in, I found something that stopped me cold. A clearing. In the center stood a single tree, blackened, half-burned, but still alive. At its base, nailed into the bark, was an old VHS tape. The same shape. The same melted plastic edges. Written on the side, in faded marker, field footage 307. My hand started shaking. The timestamp, the same as the forgotten tape. 3:07 a.m. I pried it loose, even though every part of me screamed not to. The bark behind it was torn open, like something had tried to crawl out of the tree. Inside the hollow, tucked between the roots, I found another camera, an older model, early 2000s. Its battery light was still blinking. I pressed play. The screen showed a man, dirty, exhausted, face streaked with ash. He was sitting in the same clearing, whispering directly into the lens. "If anyone finds this, he's here. Don't film. Don't record sound. The video cut out. Static filled the screen, but in the static I could make out a shape, long, thin, stretching from corner to corner. Then, faintly, a whisper leaked through the speaker. "You brought the camera." I dropped the tape and ran. Branches snapped behind me, footsteps echoing mine a half-beat late, always that same delay, like the woods were repeating me a second behind. I reached a ridge that overlooked the valley. From up there, I could see what was left of Harrow Creek, just a cluster of burned roofs and twisted metal. But there was light down there. A single flickering glow coming from one of the old houses. I had to know. As I made my way down, I heard it again, a voice. Low. Familiar. "Stop filming." It was my own voice. Echoing through the trees. I froze. The words repeated, quieter, then louder, until it sounded like they were coming from everywhere. "Stop filming. Stop filming. Stop filming." I clamped my hands over my ears and stumbled forward until I broke through the tree line. The voice stopped. The house was barely standing, a sagging shell of wood and ash. But inside, I found something impossible. Dozens of cameras. Old, new, digital, analog, all lined up on tripods, pointing toward a single spot in the middle of the room. A circle of burned wood. And in that circle, a pile of tapes. Hundreds of them. Each one marked with the same phrase. Hollow. I picked one up. It was warm. When I held it to my ear, I heard something inside, not the click of film, but breathing. I backed away, heart pounding. Then, every camera in the room powered on at once. Whirring, clicking, recording. The red lights blinked in perfect rhythm. A voice came from behind me, soft, childlike. "He's still filming." I turned. No one there. But when I looked back at the monitors, one of them showed something new. Not the empty house. Not the circle. Me. Standing exactly where I was, watching the screens, except behind me, in the feed, stood a tall, shadowed figure, its head bending low as if to whisper something into my ear. I spun around, nothing. When I turned back, the figure on the monitor was closer. Then closer still, until its face filled the screen. No eyes. No mouth. Just static where its features should be. The audio on every camera burst alive, overlapping voices, hundreds of them, all whispering the same word. Record. The floorboards began to creak under my feet. The circle of burned wood glowed faintly red, and I realized what it was, an old burn mark, the remains of something once set on fire right here. And in the flicker of my flashlight, I saw something buried in the ash. A hand. Then an arm. Then a skull, charred and cracked, its mouth open as if frozen mid-scream. Inside that mouth was another tape. I pulled it free. The label read, "Final footage." My instinct said leave, but I needed to see what was on it. I found an old player on a table, plugged it into the nearest monitor, and hit play. At first, the screen showed the same burned house, years earlier, intact. A man was filming, walking through the rooms, narrating quietly. "This is Harrow Creek, 1998. Testing audio frequencies." He sounded calm. Professional. But as he walked toward the camera's reflection in the window, I felt my stomach drop. Because the reflection wasn't his. It was mine. The same jacket. The same camera. The same scar on my hand. He looked into the lens and said. He found another one. The screen glitched, and for half a second, the reflection smiled. I ran. Outside, the forest wasn't silent anymore. It was alive, whispering, moaning, echoing fragments of my own voice. Every direction I turned, the trees seemed to shift closer. And beneath the wind, that same phrase over and over. Keep filming. Keep filming. I dropped the camera and bolted into the dark, but even without it, the whisper followed me, now inside my head, pulsing with every heartbeat. I don't know how long I ran. By the time I stopped, I was standing in another clearing, the same burned tree at its center, the nail holes still fresh. Only now, there were 2 tapes nailed to it. The second one had my handwriting on it. The second tape had my handwriting on it. Same crooked letters. Same smudge of ink on the corner. But I'd never been here before. Or at least, I thought I hadn't. I stared at it for what felt like forever. The longer I looked, the more the forest seemed to bend around me, the trees tilting inward, their branches twitching as if trying to listen. Finally, I pulled the tape off the nail. The wood behind it bled sap that looked too dark, too thick. Almost black. The label read, "Return footage." I didn't remember writing that. I didn't even remember owning that kind of tape. My flashlight started flickering, the beam slicing through the fog in sharp bursts. Every time the light blinked out, I could hear something shifting closer, a slow dragging sound, like something crawling across the leaves. Then a voice whispered right beside my ear. He's still filming. I spun around, heart hammering, no one there. But when I turned the flashlight toward the burned tree, there was a camera hanging from one of its branches. My camera. The one I'd dropped hours ago. And it was recording. I grabbed it and checked the screen. The red light was on. But it wasn't showing the forest. It was showing me. Only, not me right now. It was me from earlier, setting up camp, reviewing footage, whispering to myself about the figure behind the trees. I watched in horror as the recording began to change, subtle at first, then unmistakable. In the playback, I looked up, as if hearing something. Then I smiled. But I never smiled. Not once since I came here. I rewound. Played again. This time, as I watched myself on the screen, my other self looked directly at me through the lens. And said, "You shouldn't have come back." The recording glitched, freezing my reflection mid-smile, and I realized something horrifying. The scar on the reflection's hand was on the wrong side. It wasn't a mirror image. It wasn't me. Panic set in. I turned to run, but the forest wasn't the same anymore. The trail I came from was gone. Every tree looked identical, hollow, burned, whispering. And between them, flickers of movement, pale shapes darting just out of sight. I tried shouting, but my voice didn't echo right. It came back, slower. And different. "Don't leave yet." I clamped my hands over my ears, but it was useless. The voice wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was inside my head. I stumbled into another clearing, this one littered with broken tripods, shattered glass, and a tangle of cassette tape fluttering in the breeze. And in the center stood an old wooden chair. A figure sat in it. It looked like a man, head slumped forward, hands resting on his knees. But when I got closer, I saw what he really was. A body, dried and blackened by fire, the camera strap still around his neck. The lens pointed upward, directly at his face. I crouched down, trembling, and brushed the ash off his jacket. A name tag, half-burned, still clung to the fabric. H. Mercer, the same name in the credits of the forgotten tape. The filmmaker who disappeared 20 years ago. The camera around his neck was still on. Faintly humming. I hesitated, then pressed playback. The screen flickered, static, then shapes, then movement. The footage showed Mercer in the same clearing, alive, holding his camera, whispering to it like it was his only friend. It's not the forest. It's the recording. It listens. It copies. It needs an image, a voice, to stay alive. He looked terrified. Sweating, shaking, eyes darting to something behind the camera. Once it records you, it replaces you. He reached forward, as if trying to shut off the camera, but something in the corner of the frame grabbed him. A pale hand. Long fingers. It pulled him backward, out of view. The footage cut to black. But the audio kept running. Soft at first, then louder. He's still filming. He's still filming. He's still. I slammed the playback button, but the camera wouldn't stop. The words looped over and over, the screen flickering between Mercer's last frame and static. Then, my own face appeared on the monitor. Not live. Not recorded. Just there. And the voice changed. "You're next." I dropped the camera and ran. Didn't care where. Didn't care how. Branches tore at my clothes as I pushed through the trees, the whispers chasing me through the fog like a storm. I ran until the light changed, until the trees thinned and the night broke open into a clearing filled with broken tape reels and shattered lenses. And there, in the center, was something new. A mirror. Old, cracked, and covered in soot. And in its reflection, the forest was burning. But behind the flames, something moved. Something tall. Something reaching toward me. I stepped closer, heart pounding, whispering to myself that it wasn't real. That it couldn't be real. And then, my reflection blinked. Only, I didn't. I woke up just before dawn, lying at the edge of the woods. The forest behind me was silent again. The fog gone. My camera was beside me. Still recording. When I checked the footage later, the timestamp said 3:07 a.m. The last frame shows me walking out of the woods, staring straight ahead. But I never remembered leaving. And in the reflection of the lens, someone else was holding the camera. Clapperboard epilogue. 3 weeks later, the footage was uploaded anonymously to an archive channel. No metadata. No traceable IP. Just one file. The Hollow Woods, Final Cut .mov. At exactly 3:07 a.m., the video glitches. The frame freezes on the narrator's face. And for a brief, flickering second, the reflection smiles. Then the screen goes black. But if you listen closely, just before the audio cuts, you can still hear it whisper. He's still filming.